Welcome back to another episode of a podcast written by a software engineer. I'm your host, Perry, and I got a really special guest today. I got Tom Wicks with me. How are you, Tom?
I'm very well. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for being on the show, because you are actually the first designer I'm going to have on the show.
Wow.
And I work in web dev, and I don't personally do all the designs, but a lot of stuff depends on the designs, and you can really see these two meshing up together and just tying, the whole elements of making it work, but also make it look pretty. So I can't wait to dive into this. So yeah, thanks again for being on the show.
It's a pleasure.
But yeah, Tom, for the people who don't know you actually, what do you do nowadays?
So I'm a designer for an app called Run an Empire, which is a game which is designed to get people active. So we're trying to use the technology and I guess the kind of UI and UX that is really effective in games of kind of to change people's behavior or to make people have fun, but to use that to get people outdoors and like on their bike or in a run or just go for a little walk.
Well, that's a really cool thing, because I've personally seen the app before, and then it's something that you could have on your phone.
Yeah.
And not only do you see the phenomena of people just getting more active every single day. So like when Pokemon Go happened, everybody just like on their phone out there, and this kind of really like in the same mindset of just getting people out there and also having something that they can record the progress and all that. So I'm gonna be super excited to get into that. But I mean, have you always been a designer? Where did this inspiration come from? Did you have influence back when you were younger, or how did this all start?
Yeah, so my dad was a filmmaker, and so he had lots of like designers and artists and photographers coming through the house, and they were like the really cool people that I wanted to be like. And I guess because my like mum and dad really respected them, I thought, oh, I want to get in on that. That was great. So that kind of meant that I had like the kind of I wanted to do it, but also like I had all the tools there, so I kind of was able to play with Photoshop. At that kind of age where you maybe just kind of like you can sort of lock yourself in your bedroom and just kind of crack on with something, and that was the thing I was cracking on with. I really I sort of ended up doing little graphics and things for my dad's films, and I got into it that way.
That's so cool, because like when you mentioned that, you definitely needed a bit of technicality, but you also need a bit of creativity to do that. And
Sure.
I think for a lot of, I guess I can speak for some of the engineers out there, is that we lack the creativity. We do a lot of technical stuff, but in terms of like just being able to lose your mind, as we're saying, like just having your own time and really working with, blank canvas building stuff, I do personally find like the difficulty to do that. I really like the point when you're mentioning that your dad used to work with a lot of different designers, and when we talk about the term designing, there's different facets of it. There's graphic designs, there's all kind of like space designs and all that. So do you know what kind of different examples of design, or what kind of designs you do then?
Sure. So the work I do is mostly UI UX, but then I guess there's also a little bit of game design in there, and I think like one of the things, maybe we'll talk about it later, but that uni kind of taught us was that rather than kind of just being like in this world where we can just kind of like Google like how to do anything, it's kind of not that interesting in a way to just focus, or maybe it is, but like it's not to kind of focus on a single discipline is difficult. And so I suppose the thing I really like is just doing lots of different bits. So like sometimes doing a little bit of coding here, or doing like a little bit of graphics. And I think bringing it all together, I guess it's just kind of whatever's useful in the moment, the given brief or the given problem.
That makes sense, because I mean, like a lot of times when we learn software engineering, like you go to uni, and then you'll have specific course loads like database, and then you'll have back-end, front-end, all that kind of stuff. But you don't really know the exact problem until it happens.
Yeah.
And that's when you reiterate it. And
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure you have a system where you have one design and you have to keep on improving it every single time, because realistically, you're never going to put out something that's going to work the first time.
No.
And also you got to get feedback from the people using or looking at designs at the end. So, I mean, I really do like the bit where you're saying like you had the influence from your dad working, making videos, but also getting the influence of designs. But you also had like kind of like a pathway education-wise in design as well. So did that go back all the way from like GCSE high school kind of thing? Did you do something during that period of time?
Yeah, I remember I had a really like brilliant graphics teacher who was able to. She kind of like noticed that I could like do it, and I think it was always a thing at school that I could do really well, and like.
Is that
sorry?
No, sorry. I was just wondering, is that a specifically graphics class, or was that just an art class in general?
It was specifically graphics then, but then as we went to college, it was like an art A level we did. So that was that was nice as well because there's lots of people there, like, you know, people who do amazing paintings or whatever, and we were all kind of going, like, we were all responding to the same briefs.
Oh, okay, that's really cool, because when you're saying that there are people doing painting, so they'd be using different tools, they'd be using canvases, they'd be using paint and that.
Yeah, and we did a bit of that as well. Like we kind of used to do some screen printing and things like that, which is really like fun to play with. Have you ever done anything like that?
No, so like whenever we did anything in art classes, well, actually we didn't do loads of drawing. We had our own set of tools to draw, sometimes sculpture, so they really expose you to all kind of different form of arts. But I never had a chance to do any designs, like, I guess, electronically, where there was never a class that really emphasized like the technology that you use and building 3D designs through it or not. So I guess how much of during that period was I guess on the computer, how much of it was that you were designing stuff through some kind of software?
So it was like, back then it was like Photoshop and InDesign with the things we were using software wise. But we also learned like how to do isometrical drawing and things like that, like real kind of basics, like how to draw a cube and stuff like that, which is fun. But yeah, it was mostly like a lot of Photoshop, bit of Illustrator as well. And yeah, it was kind of back then it was like when Adobe had, it was all Adobe, right?
Yeah.
And which has maybe moved on a bit now, but
the whole suite was under.
It was a full, exactly. So it was like, you go here to do your InDesign to do your layout, you go here to do your photos, or
but they're also like industry standard. Like they're all softwares that people use nowadays in all kind of companies and all kind of productions. So in terms of replicating, even if you're just studying it, it's quite realistic to the tools are gonna.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that was a nice thing. Is like if you can get your head around the tools, then they kind of get out of the way, and you can just kind of concentrate on the specific brief, or like just express your creativity. Without thinking, how do I actually do that?
Yeah, I could imagine. So just a random question, which one came first? Did you learn Photoshop on your own first, or did you learn Photoshop during that class?
I learned Photoshop on my own first.
Okay.
But that was, just because we had it on like the computers at home.
And then you never know, man. When you have some software lying around near you, and then you just end up opening and playing with it, and you just discover a whole world. That's always like a fascinating thing. So.
Yeah, I remember we used to design our own football boots.
Like that is sick. That is absolutely sick.
They were terrible. They were really ugly, but it was really good fun.
No, to be honest though, like that's not even that crazy to think about, because like whenever I look at any sports teams or whatever, when they're wearing their kit, their jerseys, I've always been a fan of like, oh, what if I could do something different? And then like just the extension of like designing your boots at the end. I'd be so interested to see those designs back then.
Me too.
That'd be probably belong in a museum in a couple of years. So that'd be amazing.
Not sure about that.
So where did you go after doing your GCSEs then? Did you go to uni, or what happened after that?
So we after kind of during GCSEs, I met the co-founder of a company called Mill, so a company that we started, James, who was a developer. So I had to make a website for a band, and in the mock-ups for the website, I'd put in a Twitter feed, which was really stupid because I didn't know how to make a Twitter feed. And so I got about £100 for the website, but I ended up paying James like £70 to make the Twitter feed work. So he came on board, and we set up this company called Mill, which really, like, to start with, just making websites for for the friends of our mums, or like but then we like grew it, and before we knew it, we were kind of in offices in Oxford Street.
That's really, really sick, just because like even just me nowadays, I do have a couple of people asking me like, can you build this, can you build that?
Exactly.
And your journey of making that into an actual project and making that into a company, and then just not outsourcing, you're doing the work, but then like having all these people coming to you. So
yeah,
was it a match made in heaven kind of thing, that you were always looking for a developer to do it? Because like design and developer really works tight together. So was the priority more to get a developer, or was there ever a thought of getting like somebody who has more of a business or like finance background in it?
There definitely was later on, but I think at that point it was like, I can't do this bit. This is way. And I think James was also like, well, I'm not interested in doing this design stuff. So I think it was like, we just kind of found each other. And at that time, it was before like all the website builders were really any good. So if you were a like small business, it was really useful to have a couple of kids make your website for much cheaper than someone else would, like a big company would.
Yeah, I mean, shout out to all the, WordPress, Squarespace, all the stuff
Yeah.
out there that are currently competing against each other. But you were definitely at the forefront of,
I don't know about that, but I think yeah, definitely it was it was really fun, and also it was before like you had to make everything responsive, right? So like it was before smartphones, so you just kind of like had a 960 grid or whatever. So it was more like doing graphics.
That's actually such a good point because nowadays, like a lot of websites, if you don't support mobile version or mobile WIFs, you're absolutely screwed.
Yeah, you can't do
it.
that, right? You can't. Yeah,
Yeah.
Those days are gone, I think.
Well, I mean, until the next device comes out, and then it's like another like format that you have to support.
Yeah,
That's another thing that we could actually dive in later. It's like I remember somebody telling me that the color used on a print and the color used on the actual computer is a two different like system going on.
You don't want to get that wrong.
Oh man. Yeah, I know. We're definitely gonna dive into that in a bit. But one of the things that was actually quite interesting that you mentioned is that so you were doing these projects that people were requesting, kind of thing. Like, can I do this? Can I do that? In terms of like scalability, as I guess work kind of like increases, did you have a system of like making sure that you're able to like keep up with it, or was it just do as you go? Because I'd imagine you were quite young back then as well.
Yeah, we were, and we definitely like fell into the trap of being too busy and like I guess being a bit greedy and going, yeah, we can do that, we can do this, we can do that. I think like we ended up using like some outsourcing to some developers and got some other designers on board, which worked fairly well. But I guess I think when it got to the point where it felt like I was spending more time managing that and the people doing that, it wasn't I wasn't doing the designing that I was really enjoying. So it was kind of I don't know, that became less interesting to me, and I thought I want to just go and focus on learn how to design better.
That's such an interesting thing to look at, actually, because a lot of people, when you got to that point, you don't really realize you got to that point. As in, you started with a passion where you just, I want to put out designs, and you're working with somebody who's able to, reproduce that kind of design on the web, and then getting a Twitter feed going, which requires the API, which is always like a fun thing to do. So,
whoa!
Yeah. How does it update automatically? God knows.
What's PHP? I'll have to learn that. Yeah.
So how long into, I guess, co-founding the project did you realize that you got yourself into that like position of doing more of the operations and actually doing the designs yourself? Was it like maybe just a couple of months into it, or was it like a couple?
Well, so we had a year where we went full time on it shortly after college, and it was during that year really where it became apparent that that was just taking too much of my time. I think it was like
But actually, did you actually got the chance to work with other designers during that time?
Yeah, definitely. So we shared an office actually with a company called iCreative, who are still going, really good graphics firm. And it was nice working with them on projects and collaborating. I think they had they did a lot more print than we did. So we were kind of more web and app based.
So there would be, I guess, if they have any merch going on, and then if anybody had any expositions, they'll be doing
or like brochures and things like that.
Oh, that's really cool. So, and in terms of anybody more, I guess, junior than you, did you ever get the chance to like just look over people during that time? Because obviously by that point you've definitely had much more hands-on experience. Yeah,
definitely. And that was strange because I guess you were like managing people who were a bit older than you and had been to university and stuff. So that was a weird time, but I really enjoyed that, and I think that it's really it's fulfilling in a different way when you can sort of give someone a little bit of advice about something and then it comes out and it looks great, and it like rather than you just doing it yourself. I think that's it's a slightly different thing, but it's brilliant.
Yeah, for sure. Because I mean, like, even from my point of view, I'm definitely like, if I ever were to start it tomorrow, for example, I wouldn't see the craft the same way as you do today. And I guess like from our point of view, kind of thing. Like, do you have like, are there any general mistakes that you saw quite often when somebody like just kind of got into it? Or
I think the big mistake is like the dribblification of design. So have you heard that term? So
I've never heard of it.
So the website Dribble, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like lots of kind of really pretty, fancy UI designs which have like no, like, which are baffling to most users, right? And I think a lot of the traps that people all fell into, and myself included, I fell into them as well. It's just kind of like thinking, oh, that's really nice, I'm going to do that really interesting, fun button. And then you get that in front of a user and they're like, what do I do with this? I've got to swipe with my face. Great. Yeah. And so I think that's, definitely that's something. And make a button look like a button.
Yeah, exactly. It also depends on how much time you want to spend on it. Because I feel like, as me just watching all over these startups kind of thing, like you can't always spend 7 hours designing one button, and you can't always like spend 10 minutes just making a random button that's not going to be effective. So finding the balance between knowing what's going to be effective, but also not having a full time sink into it. That's always
definitely. But I think that's I think the key thing is to get it out, validate it right as quickly as possible. And I think that's, as a designer, that's what you're trying to do most of the time.
Do you use any tools to validate, or is it more just a human feeling or human feedback? We
use I've forgotten the name of it, but it's a tool basically where you can users kind of talk into the. They use the app and they record as they use the phone and things like that. But we also just get people around the table in focus groups. That's really effective,
Okay, I've never heard of that kind of system where somebody was able to talk while looking at it.
It's fantastic. So. I must remember the name of it, but it's there's a few of them that do it. But it's really useful because you if whatever you're
looking at the in the moment, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, exactly. And and also if you kind of got loads of stakeholders around the table, you can see, oh look, people are finding that bit difficult. Because for us, it's really the really important bit in the game is the first. Well, it's all really important, but one of the most important bits is the first time user experience.
Yeah.
So
even just onboarding a user, and we could definitely get into that sure. when we get to that point, because the whole story so far has been absolutely sick, where you have this whole background of having the positive influence, but you did mention that you want to spend, I guess, dedicate more time into actually doing the craft of designing and everything. So what was the step after that? What was the step after doing Milne?
Sure. So then I went to Goldsmiths, which is a fantastic design university in just not far from here in New Cross. And they teach it's called a post-disciplinary approach to design, which is this idea that it's not about teaching someone how to be really, really good at graphics, because you can just learn that on your own, right? But it's about how to respond to a brief, how to come up with ideas or generate ideas. So what they do is they give you really wide open briefs, and then you'd often in a team you'd much like workers now, right? You'd respond to it. So there'd be people there who are fantastic furniture makers or really brilliant photographers, and we'd all come together to respond and to do a project.
That's really cool, because the way I would look at it is that there's the micro of it and there's the meta of it. So when you were doing your GCSE and when you were learning the tools like Photoshop and Design Illustrator, that's kind of the micro of knowing how to cut stuff, how to do all that pasting in, and then all the blending, all the stuff together. But this, when you were mentioning this program, this design course, is mostly focused on the meta of it.
Exactly,
of how you put all this together, how you go from idea all the way to actually putting a product out there that people could base off of, or you could actually use it to print out merch. So that is a really important step, I guess, from what you do nowadays, because you definitely need the micro and the meta, the macro, I guess, of how stuff works. How long was the program itself, I guess, for anybody who actually wanted to go into it? I'm just putting this out there, because what you did was that you did GCSE and then you actually took the year to work on the project, or a bit more than that, and then you went to uni slightly, a little bit, I guess, delayed, not straight after GCSE. So what kind of context was it? How long was the program itself?
So it's a 3 year degree, and so we so in there, but then you got lots of holidays and stuff. So I go back to working for the company Milne, and over the summers, which was kind of bringing a bit of cash for the term time. But yeah, so it was about a 3 year course. Yeah,
your summer job was definitely better than mine, I guess. I was working at a day camp. To be fair, the day camp was really, really fun anyway. So it was just a completely different thing. So you did go to uni in London. Were you based in London before, or did you?
So yeah, I had a grandma who lived in Crouch End in North London, and so we had we used to always come down for summers and things like that when we were kids. So it sort of felt like it felt like I'd always be in London. I really loved it. I still love it, and I think it felt like a fantastic place to do design, and it seemed like the kind of jobs were there, the more interesting jobs, and the course was there as well, which was fantastic.
That's what I was gonna say, because London is definitely a hub for, nowadays a lot of tech stuff is happening, but also when you're talking about architecture, and when you talk about all the other arts and crafts that exist out there, London is definitely one of the places where you're going to get the influence. And I'm sure you've met loads of different other students at Goldsmith that did, I guess, arts programs. So where did this fall into, this design course? Was it under like the College of Arts, or was it more the College of like, I guess, Architecture or College of Designs, or what kind of system?
So there's a design department which offers a BA and an MA. I think you do a PhD there if you want to, but which is separate to the art department. And the art department is it's really well known. I mean, the design department's really well known as well, but it's sort of quite famous and it's quite poncy.
Yeah, well, I can imagine when people say London and Union London, it's like just another level of eloquence over there. So what I'm actually interested in is I guess how do you apply for it? How does somebody that is kind of like at the steps as you were back then, where they, I guess, just finished their GCSE and they really have this interest in designs, what do you need to prepare, I guess? What did you have to show when you applied to Goldsmith?
Well, so the process is, I don't know what it's like in Canada, but the process is, for us, is you apply to like 5 universities. So it might be like you've got the kind of one that you really want, and then a few that perhaps don't want as much. And because it's a design course, you show them your portfolio. So you sort of send in like in a digital format, I think. And then if that goes well, then they get you back to kind of come in person. And that was a really brutal process in some places where I remember I went to another course in Chelsea, and I had my a sort of physical portfolio was there, and I had my why I wanted to, I'd left my letter why I wanted to go to Goldsmiths in my portfolio for this interview at Chelsea.
Yeah, and did you have to submit that then?
No, they were like they sort of, I left them alone with the portfolio, and they were like, came back and they were like, you left this in there. I was like, oh my god, it was like one of those moments. But yeah, so
I mean, they should have known that you've definitely looked at more than one college. I
Yeah,
mean, like
of course.
realistically,
Yeah.
it's. I mean, who's gonna lie? I mean, even back then, it's all about like professional.
Oh yeah,
but,
of course.
I mean, just the environment I've seen and worked in nowadays. That like, guys, let's be real. Good on you for looking at more than one. Good on whoever's out there trying to be in that position. Looking at that,
it was just sloppy from me. But but I think so then you go to an interview and you have it was one of those moments. Sometimes when in life where you kind of meet someone and you think, yes, this feels exactly right. And I get like. I've had it on, when I met my girlfriend now, and like, you're just like, yes, this is the person or the place where I want to spend the next few years. And I think, and that was one of those conversations that I had there with the course leader, Matt Ward, was just like, oh, yes, he thinks about design in the same way I do. And it just felt like that was where I wanted to go.
Oh, that's so good. So you had the application through your portfolio, and then you got the face-to-face kind of thing where you go on site, and that's really when you get a feeling of what you're going to get into for the next couple of years, obviously, because it's a commitment you're going to do.
Exactly.
And it sounded like they absolutely made a great impact on what your expectation was and what their expectation is, because obviously they have access to your work that you've done before. But can we talk about that portfolio a little bit in terms of
Sure.
What did you need to put into it, and where did you get those? I guess at what point did you actually have the material that you?
Well, I had a lot of graphics work from the stuff I've been doing with Milne. So like with kind of websites that I'd made and little bits of posters and other graphics. So it was made up of that really.
That's really cool. And for those who didn't have that like experience before doing then, what kind of material during GCSE are you allowed to submit? Are you allowed to take any of the projects that you've done during that time?
Yes, yeah, definitely. You're allowed to take your I think if you've made it, you can take it. But I think there was some really, I think some people just submitted some really beautiful drawings, and I think it was very much about, it was more about just meeting you and like just like the way you like see the world and rather than specifically about your work life. I think they were much more interested in people, and even in people who didn't really have a not graphically, but like a design background.
Yeah, or like a more creative way of doing it. Because the only thing I could compare it to is that whenever I had to apply for anything, it was never really like a face-to-face thing.
Right.
It was always like, obviously you got your grades, and then the grades kind of is just a number on the paper, and then you just sign it up there. And then just because all the programs out there kind of is, I guess, I did computer science, so it was all like technical stuff.
Right.
There's never really any portfolio stuff. And then I had a couple of friends who were doing different kind of programs. Like they were getting into a music degree, they were getting into an arts degree, they're getting into a design degree, and them seeing them produce a portfolio of all the creative work, that felt so much more satisfying than you just walking in with a paper and it has all your grades on it. So.
Yeah, that's true. Did you have to do like a technical test or something like that to get it?
Not for uni. For uni, it was always just all about the grades. And if you've survived, I guess, like physics and like chemistry and all that, then you could probably do some computers.
Yeah, sure.
It was definitely that. But yeah, it's just really good for seeing from your point of view, and that portfolio, I think it's such a good influence. I guess if ever you have other people just checking it out, that's probably the starting point of how you got into Goldsmith. So what kind of lifestyle did you have at Goldsmith? So you would go to courses, it would be, I guess, quite intense. Did you get the chance to do more designs on your own, or was it always focused on putting out a project for your course loads?
It was both, really. So I was still doing the Milne stuff on the side, and I was and also kind of doing the projects. I think I don't know, I think maybe I was like working a bit too hard, maybe didn't enjoy the like first bit of uni as much as I could have done.
It's a gift and a curse of working too hard.
Yeah, but I don't know, I really think like maybe that first year I perhaps should have spent just just kind of like enjoying the uni life a little bit more than just kind of cracking on. But that's one of those things, isn't it? But yeah, no, it was fantastic, and you kind of doing this like real mix of work from like the in some ways quite dry briefs with Milne, like can you make a website for a water treatment company? Sure. Yeah. Like but then to the really creative stuff that we were doing with Goldsmiths.
That's pretty cool, because so by this point when you got into this course, it was always the assumption that it was all going to be web based, or was there still like a distinction between doing web stuff, doing graphic stuff, doing printing stuff? Or
I remember like a conversation with my tutor where they went, I know you can make a website. Like, so they were like, don't do that anymore. Do something that's like just weird and, like enjoy this time. Don't just focus on like, I'm just going to, respond to a brief with a website or whatever. So I think it was, you were encouraged to get out of your little disciplinary box, I guess.
Okay, good. Because I mean, that's a lot more realistic to nowadays, because you're never going to be comfortable. You're never going to be comfortable with whatever you're doing, and just all the projects. I just want to mention real quickly, during that time, when you were given a brief, what was the thought process? What was like, do you just crank a couple designs out and see which one you like best, or did you always have like a phase of research before then? Or
always, yeah. So it would always start with some kind of research. So like maybe a good example of a product was we did something about the Cutty Sark, which we've just walked past. So the brief was called "The Environment Keeps Happening to Me." So we were each and we were in little groups of maybe 6 or 7, and each group had and each group was given a place in London where they had to in some way sort of respond to the area and put on something. So the thing that we did was we sort of started through that. We in the kind of research phase. So I guess the kind of first thing we did was we found out that there's a different history to the Cutty Sark, which is it's this kind of it's there as this sort of empirical, like we're this fantastic naval nation, like hey, look how great we are, sort of thing. But actually, it wasn't a very good ship. It kept like breaking, and it's kind of had this like calamitous life all the way through its life. And so we put on this alternative Cutty Sark museum, which was like in the car park below it. And we had things like it won the Carbuncle Award. So like that's like the award for like the worst bit of architecture in the in the country, and it won that. And so we made a giant one of those trophies, and it was really good fun. And like we had little the people from the Cutty Sark came down, and they weren't happy.
They weren't too happy, but I mean, like, it's just more attention to what's going on, because I do like when you mentioned like the world's worst blah. There's definitely a contest every year, like the world. There's like a hackathon.
Okay.
For like the worst like design or like UI UX kind of thing. And
right.
Like,
okay. Nice.
If I get the chance, I'll send you the list. But it's a list of websites that are like the least efficient possible.
Right.
So imagine a date picker.
Okay.
So they'd be one of them would be like just random generated numbers that would flip every second.
That's great.
And like you just got to get it on the right time to get the right date to submit it. So
that's brilliant.
Yeah, I do like that. It really just gets you to be creative, and it has to be doing that. For the people who don't know the Cutty Sark, it's a
Yes.
landmark in London.
I bet you didn't think you'd be saying that.
Yeah, it's a landmark in London. It's a boat. It's basically a giant boat that.
Yeah.
Was it ever used?
Yeah, it was
Okay,
like
so I didn't know this.
yeah.
I think it was actually.
Yeah, it was like a tea clipper, so it brings back tea from India, I think.
Okay,
Yeah.
wow. So definitely loads of history, and then like obviously you get to learn much more about that, and then. So was that like a year or degree ending project, or was that just one of the projects?
That was like a 2-week brief or something.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Did you have like a big project like for like your final project? What did that one look like?
So that was the thing I was really interested in was like politics and parliament and the different ways that we can sort of bridge that gap. So I spent like maybe half a year kind of like going into parliament. Because you can just go in and like watch a debate or whatever.
Yeah, I've heard about this.
It's great. So I just kind of like went in and just hung about really, and I ended up having some really cool experiences where I sort of met like really kind of top politicians, and just by sort of hanging around with people and seeing if I can be helpful or whatever.
Yeah. So yeah, even during uni at that time, one thing that really worked out for you is that you've always been outreaching and really just getting exposed to, when you're saying getting into the parliament, nobody really does that. But then like when you do it, you end up meeting all the MPs and that. So how did this all tie up to the final project that you were completing?
So I was having a lot of conversations with MPs, and they were saying that they we're getting lots of these surveys in from like things like 38 Degrees, where people have just kind of pressed a button to say that they agree or disagree with something. And at the same time, like the other thing that was happening was like we all carry around with us like these devices that are constantly monitoring our behavior. So what I wanted to do was to see if we could in some ways like weaponize that data that we're creating all the time to help make a case for some political change. So for example, if you really want a bike lane somewhere, if you can show that you cycle to work every day, that's a much better place to make a case rather than just, I would like a bike lane.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it was kind of looking at the ways that you can leverage that data for political activism.
That's pretty cool. So in terms of I guess that kind of like the research bit to it and really convincing the case and that, what did you end up presenting at the end from all these findings?
So it's a series of those tools. So like the bike one was one. The other one was like if you want your local post office to stay open, then show that you use it.
Okay.
So if and it was just a simple GPS thing that just kind of like said whether or not someone like was using it or was in it.
What's interesting with all this is that like I do find a parallel between like this design stuff and then also like just project managing or even just product managing and finding like the reasoning of doing something at the end. So was it a team that you were in doing this project? Was it just every individual had to find their own?
That was just me, that one. So that in the final year you get a year to work on something that you're interested in, and that was on your own, and that was what I chose. Okay,
that's interesting. Just because like I feel like a lot of times, sometimes when you're I guess in uni, a lot of times don't know what direction they want to go.
Right. Yeah.
Especially how if you go onto a course that's quite general, you'll be like, you need that determination of getting out there and knowing exactly what you do. Because I mean, even in computer science, by the time you end up like finishing your degree and everything, there's so many fields in computer science. It could be you could work in researching in machine learning, being a data scientist, or you could end up just building web apps or somebody just working on database. So it is good that you actually found something that you were able to love and understand, and just like having something made out of it at the end. So that ended up being quite a journey so far, because I mean, like, you did a GCSE already project, and then you just finished your Goldsmith in our timeline coming on. So how did the transition go from, I guess, graduating from a uni degree and then just, I guess, going back into the real world?
So I at Goldsmiths, Sam and Ben, who run Pan Studio, they came in and did a workshop with us. And I thought they were great, and I think I went up to them and said something a bit. What's the word I'm looking for?
Well, I mean, you just, like, the kind of you introduce yourself kind of thing.
I introduced myself, yeah, and and they didn't notice or remember me, but then later on, we were, as part of the course, we had to do an internship, and so I went and interned with them, and mainly to make their website was like what I went to do initially, and then and then after the Goldsmiths, they asked me to come back and work there full time.
That's amazing. So the people doubting on going to the workshops and all the career fairs that are available at university, definitely give that a chance, I guess.
Well, it wasn't really a career fair. It was more just they just came in and just ran a workshop. So we get like outside studios would come in and do the odd little bit, which is it's fantastic part of the course. Yeah,
that's really sick. Because I'm pretty sure that do you ever get the chance today to do something similar, or did you have ever the thought of doing something?
What to go in? Or?
That you would be the one going into like
right? Yeah,
and
maybe. I think it's like I guess with those things, sometimes it's difficult to justify the time because it takes a long to really prepare a workshop that's going to be good fun and
captivating and getting.
It's really quite a big job, and so it can be a bit of a distraction,
Yeah.
Or whatever.
And also getting the attention of, I guess, like just people in uni, which are 19, 20, 20 years old. It's not always the easiest thing, just because nowadays all the technology behind you got phones, laptops, everything, all the distractions. So I do understand it's quite something to prepare. You did mention Pan Studio though. What is Pan Studio, and what attracted to you to that?
So Pan Studio is a interaction design studio based in the bottom of Somerset House, and they make work which sits, I guess, between art, technology, and interaction design. So they do a lot of interesting projects. But the project that I work on now is called Run an Empire, and that came out of a Ben and Sam were in the pub and they were kind of working out
of course,
yeah. They were working out what would get them out, like moving and active. And I think through that they sort of came upon this gamifying running and turning the kind of streets into a game board almost, and so that developed into its own company, and now that's what we work on full time.
That's really sick. For the people who haven't checked it out yet, Run an Empire, it's available on iOS and Android if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Just because you do feel the satisfaction at the end of if you're able to capture all these areas, and definitely go check it out. The one thing that I'm quite interested in is, so you did an internship there before actually working there full time. What was the contrast? What was your day-to-day like during the internship compared to working there full time?
I suppose it's pretty similar. I think the difference was that when I went there to do the internship, I sort of had a project which was the website, so it was like that was the only thing I was working on. Whereas obviously when I went and joined them, I would just get involved with whatever brief we had in at the time. But so I guess it was just kind of focused on that. Also, they had different offices, so it looked different. But yeah, there wasn't much differences really.
Oh, that's cool then. So you definitely feel at least a little level of reassurance when you get into these, coming back to a project that you worked on a couple months before. In terms of the internship though, other than speaking to them when they came in and everything, was there any other kind of process or screening or any kind of thing happening between then?
Well, so I think basically they just kind of go. I went in for an interview. I think I maybe sent them some of my work before, and then just kind of talk through your portfolio a little bit and talk about why you made some decisions. And I think from there they were like, great,
that's so cool. So how much of when you were doing the internship, I guess, how much of the actual like decision, I want a button here or I want like this graphic there, did you have to make, or was there always like some indication or like a brief, I guess, that told you where buttons go? Or
I think like by then I was like kind of knew how to make a website, as in like the process. So the really key thing was just to kind of get some quick and dirty wireframes done, and so you kind of as quickly as possible you're starting to make some decisions about where things are going to go, and then from that you start making more high fidelity mock-ups. So kind of like, which essentially would just look exactly like the website will look.
Right.
And then pretty quick after that started moving into code.
Okay.
And that's the process.
Yeah, just the whole range, really covering the whole range by the time you get to do all of that. So I'm personally quite familiar with like how an engineering team works. So you got a couple engineers, you got product manager, and a lot of times they do mention that the luxury is having a in-house designer. The luxury
Right.
is having with an engineering team, having a designer to do
Right.
it.
Nice.
How did that look like when I guess when you worked there full time? What kind of I guess the team looked like from your perspective?
So it changed really. So when I first started, we were Panda Studio, and so we were all designers. So like everyone in the team was a designer. So I think we had 4 or 5 designers. And then when we made the change to become a game, and we bring developers in, like you say, like developers might come in for, contractors might come in for like a couple of days or whatever. But then we made a change to become the games company running Empire. And so then we had a server-side developer, a client-side Unity developer. Then Sam, who's a co-founder, but also does our game design, and me, who sits on sort of UI UX, and then we've got Laura, who does our illustration. So that's the kind of how the team works.
Okay, so that's a good combination, because whenever you need to bounce ideas off of people, you always got that kind of bouncing back as well. So you would pitch something and then would go work together. Definitely, let's get into the UI UX bit, because that's obviously important. UI user interface, UX user experience, translating the feeling of putting all these, I guess, boxes and CSS like exact pixels together and translating it into a human feeling. That's a big task. It's always it's hard. I try to do it. I make websites, but I never actually get to do it. What is indicators that tells you that the feeling of a, I guess, design works with the UI but also the UX, I guess? What makes you say that a user is going to have a great experience looking at this thing?
I suppose the most important thing is just to get it in front of people as quickly as possible. So I think otherwise you're just kind of working on your own intuition, which is fine up to an extent, but you're always going to come a cropper. And the things that I think I think for me it's just about let's just get it out there. Let's see how people respond to it, and then let's iterate on it as quickly as possible. I think that's always been my process, rather than kind of sitting here and sort of thinking, right, I'm just going to really craft this perfect interaction first time, because it's much more rewarding to craft something and spend a bit of time just finessing it at the end once you've validated it, so that people are going to use it. So I think that for me has always been the process, rather than sort of sitting and thinking, yes, this is brilliant.
It does make sense, because I think what's slightly different nowadays is that instead of the different models of building something, so in software engineering, if you compare it back then, it's like if you're gonna build a building, for example, you need a lot of blueprinting. You need to spend years and years to make sure that all the foundation works and everything is going to be safe, and then it's kind of like a one-shot thing. You only got one shot to build it, and then if it breaks on the build, then that's a terrible thing. So that's why you spend so much time. But in 2019, all the stuff that we build, the iteration happens so quickly, just because we have so many different tools and levels to do it, that we don't have to blueprint every single thing. By the time we open the building, you could build something and then just iterate on that. So we personally use a lot of mock-ups, I guess, mocks, sure, as they're given, and then you're trying to implement it as an engineer to make sure that all the stuff works together. What's the best way of putting mocks out there? What's the best way of having a quick idea? You got something in your brain and you want to put it out there. What's the way to go about that?
Well, I guess so. For me, I use a really ugly primitive tool to start with called Flow.io, and I think Google own it, but it's basically just the sort of basically a way of drawing flow diagrams.
Yeah.
And so I find that really useful to just get some feedback on the wireframes as soon as possible. So that's fantastic, because that kind of kicks things off, and that's developers can come back on that and say, hey, I think it would be better if it was this way, and likewise game design can say, hey, that doesn't quite feel right yet. Or they might say, that's fantastic, Tom, you've really nailed it that time. So try and do that as quickly as possible, and then I get into Adobe Experience Design is the one that I use to do more high fidelity mockups. So that's a fantastic tool where you can put sort of transitions in and animations and really play with it on your phone before a developer's actually written a line of code. But I guess with all those things, and I think I know people have good experiences with Figma, and I've used Sketch in the past quite a lot. But I think the holy grail for those is that if it could turn out production code, because I don't know how you find it, but that handover where a developer's got to redo something that I've just done in XD or whatever, it feels really wasteful.
Wasteful, repetitive. That
Yeah, and also like you haven't spent all that time in computer science like degrees to like just make my mock-ups. Like it's I think the developers I know, I don't think they enjoy that part of the process, like that kind of just sort of trying to copy something from your screen.
That's the thing. That's very true. I've definitely met people who it's not that they don't like it or they don't care about it. It's just that like they definitely have a more bigger passion for something else.
Yeah,
they enjoy it, but they're just like, if you're given a brief and you're able to like implement it just like the brief, it's a lot easier for them, for their life, than just like given some instructions that like this page should contain blah blah blah, and then you just end up being like, what am I doing with it? So,
and I think you can spend more time on the handover than just doing it or whatever. So I think where possible, I try and get it into Unity, or I've been playing with Swift UI.
Swift, yeah.
And that feels like a really interesting tool where for the first time you can do kind of real time like edits without having to kind of restart Xcode or whatever, and that feels really powerful. I think that's quite an exciting way of going, because then you start to understand your designs within the sort of context of the phone straight away, and like what's really easy to do in that and what's hard to do. Whereas sometimes if you're just sitting in XD, that's got a different set of rules and principles that doesn't quite translate onto the phone sometimes.
But that's the thing. And also when we were talking about just re-rendering really quickly and seeing the changes happen,
yes,
it never used to be like that back then.
No.
Like even in web dev back then, you had to like stop your app, like save it, and then rerun it just so you could do it. So all these tools, all these developers that are making tools for other developers and designers to work out there, like they're doing great work in terms of understanding the actual realistic case of, if I change this thing, I want to see it right away and see how it looks like. And it's good that you even get to see it happen with your inputs. You have different inputs, you kind of put stuff together. You mentioned the word wireframe. For the people that don't exactly know what's a wireframe, and also like how much detail is in a wireframe, could you give us a bit of like, I guess, context of what that is?
So a wireframe is like a skeleton of a product, or often I guess in my experience it's been an app or website, but really what you're trying to do there, so it's just it looks like sort of lots of outlined grey boxes or black boxes. So you have a bit of text in there, and what you're really just trying to do there is just get a bit of feedback on something before, as quickly as possible. And so it's designed to look ugly, and so like sometimes you have to prepare like clients for that. So you've got to say like this isn't what it's going to look like in the end. You could but it's a really important step. And also I think it's useful because instead of like thinking about the typography or the color, you're just thinking about the layout decisions and the kind of architecture of the app.
I was going to say probably at that stage, the positioning of elements are definitely much more important than the actual content of it.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing for the text, sometimes you'll just do like a lorem ipsum in there.
I don't actually. I try and get the text nailed in there because I think that's that can be a real. So the thing I find really useful, and they look rubbish, but is like I use emojis and and text, but like through that you can kind of get pretty quickly a real feel for how it's going to feel and what's going to be the friction points there and what's going to work really well.
Okay, that's really cool, because in my head when I was talking about like the level of details you needed for that wireframe is that you actually do need the content, and you actually, like, if there are images, you actually do need the images by that point.
Kind of. I suppose like I guess it not so much images, but I think like icons and things like that, because that sort of helps people understand the decisions you've taken.
That's so cool. And another thing that I've definitely delve into a bit is color palettes, like color in general, color in web, color in apps. So where does this come from? When people talk about a color palette could be 6 colors, or it could be 24, or like 48 colors at the end. How do you start with this? Like, if you have to make a design, do you do the color first and then designs, or do you do like design first and then you add the colors after? So
for me at the moment, because I'm mostly working around an empire, like we picked the colors maybe a year ago now, right? So
Right,
it's
yeah.
like, so we're just using those now. But for a new product or whatever, like I think color's really important because, well, it's important for tons of reasons, but one of them is it gives the person an instant feeling about a product, or like almost straight away. And so so usually you're just thinking about what's the things that I want people to think when they see this.
Yeah, and then obviously sometimes they'll just be saying like, oh, red is like, anger, or like red is a lot of activity kind of thing, and then like just more mellow stuff you'll have like, yellow, or like green is more mellow at that point. So
yeah,
that's really sick, because one of the cool tools out there that is available for anybody just working on a project are just these color palette generators,
right.
Just because there's a crowd for them, just because they know that not everybody is able to put colors together. And when you're saying like having a feeling to it, when you have brands out there like Deliveroo, that like blue green that everybody recognizes, and then you have other brands out there that is even without having the word Deliveroo on it, you just know that color is going on there. That's definitely part of the design, part of the impact of doing that. And something that we mentioned before is that print and digital, color wise, I don't know if you know why they have like two different systems going on. So
sorry,
for the people that are like kind of not understanding what I'm talking about, is that like if you for example, if you choose a color building a website, you have a hex code, and then it's a hex code, or there's a different format of using it, but hex code is one of the more, I guess, standard one. And you just put the hex code in, it kind of looks like color, it's fine. But when you take that same hex code and you print it, it doesn't show the same on a piece of paper than on your computer. So there's another system, I guess, for all the print. Are you able to like just like me personally, because I have no idea how any of this works?
Yeah, so there's two really. So there's RGB, which is like screen color. So that's like your hex codes, and that's always going to look brighter because it's backlit.
Yeah.
So whereas printers work slightly differently. That's CMYK. So that's cyan, magenta, yellow, and then K stands for black for some reason. I don't know why. But but yes, and they're just the cartridges in the printer. So you're saying to the printer, I want you to use like this much black, this much magenta, this much cyan, and that's how it builds the color for you. So it's just about the output really.
Okay. I like how there's so much thought behind just the user viewing it, because the user viewing it from a light source, which is a screen, and a viewer looking at a piece of paper is going to be definitely different. And then it is, I guess, from a technical point of view, when you just actually specify how much blue, how much yellow, and how much magenta, well, cyan, and how much black in there, that kind of makes sense to me, because it's just like a one-to-one mapping, and it kind of...
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Kind of flows really, really well. Another thing that... I don't know if you decided to do this, but you were talking about web designs, but also mobile designs. Mm-hmm. And they're two, I guess, I'm ready to say they're two very different experience for the user, because one of them, most of them on mobile, you're using your thumb, and then the other one is using, clicking, and you have much more real estate in terms of the screen for a web app. So have you always had experience in designing for mobile and designing for web, or was it more just general, and then when the actual job required it, you ended up adapting to designing for mobile devices, I guess?
Well, I guess it was whenever the iPhone became really popular. I guess it came out in 2008, but most people had it in, I guess, 2010, 2011 onwards, right? So it just meant like that, people are going to want to be able to look at your website on the bus. I think that's like, I think, responsive web design, it gets, I think often we try and put these terms on things that make it sound a little bit more complicated than it is, but really it's just that, like, and you're thinking about things like where people's thumb positions are. So like there's places in the screen, and like you can get these graphs up where it's like, this is a really hard place to touch, so like don't put anything that a user's going to be using lots of time there, and this is like a really easy place to touch.
And as the screens get bigger as well, just because the phones are massive nowadays, you have to think about thumb position, and this is more user experience than anything. So do you happen to like quite often do two designs for the same page then, just because you have like different screen sizes? And
so usually I do so for a website I do a like a desktop version and a like mobile version for the same site, and so you can get really granular within that, like, but you can do a sort of tablet version, but usually I find that that kind of gives you 2 points where you need to get to, and then the other stuff you can sort it out so it graphically looks, pretty good.
Yeah, that makes sense because I mean the challenges I have as somebody who just implements a website, I do some designs, but they're nowhere near professional grade. The hardest thing for us is the positioning of all the elements. So depending on, I guess, if we're doing HTML, the vanilla stuff are not powerful enough. We always use like a framework on top of it.
Okay.
Have you gotten the chance to talk to anybody about that in terms of like how come that when you change the size of a window, if you have 3 columns, it becomes like a single column most of the time? Is that some problems that you have to personally tackle, or is it a separate concern for another part of the
No, I think you definitely have to tackle that. I think it's all about, anyone can make, well, not anyone, but like it's very easy to make one size look great. But, I think you really have to make sure that you're doing the whole thing. And that's one of those things. It's like, that's a really easy one, right? It's like the 3 column to 1 column. That's an absolute classic. Like, it's just a really easy way of showing lots of information on the phone.
That's the thing. And the other one that's quite classic that's always been a pain to deal with is that, when you have a menu on a website, but then when you go into mobile, you either put like a hamburger menu or you have to find another way to get a menu on that.
Yeah, I think that hamburger gets a bad rap, but it is I think you have to label it. I think that's the secret. Otherwise, people are just like, what is that?
Yeah, I mean the 3-line is getting universal. The 3-line hamburger is getting.
You'd be surprised. I've sat in users research sessions and users just been like, what is that?
Oh, what does that even supposed to mean? Oh,
yeah, exactly. God. So I really think you got to be really clear and label it.
Okay, that's something that I had a bad, I guess, assumption is that my bad assumption is that like everybody knows that is for menu, but apparently
but like we do because we're really good at using technology. But
yeah, to be fair, but like
most people aren't. They get on with their lives.
Yeah,
other things to do.
You got to depend on product as well. So some product are slightly different. So another thing that I do notice sometimes happening is that like there are some designs that some websites that keep track on where you click and the user flow, and if they bounce off the page, for example. So if they're on it for a couple of seconds and they leave the page, it's not always a good thing.
Yeah.
And there's all these like Google Analytics and all these stuff to track on where they click, where they lead to, and all that kind of stuff. Have you in the past, I guess, couple of years with all the different projects, like put a lot of attention to that? Have you put a lot of attention on trying to keep the user going and making sure that the buttons make sense? So if you put a button there and nobody clicks it, what's the point?
Yeah, we're absolutely obsessed by that. That's our all of the decisions that we're making about running an empire are like data led. So they're going like people are getting to this part of so we call it like a funnel. So like because people right at the start, that's like 100% of your users, and then you get down to like another number, and like at every step you'll lose a few users just because like that's just how it works, right? And so it's just about making more people get to the next step, and if you can flatten out that funnel, then your product's in a pretty good position.
Well, that's the thing. And then
so I was just going to say, so that's something that we're looking at all the time. Like that's my every day will be going, right, what are users doing at this page? What are they confused about? And then often what you can do is then that's a nice moment to bring in kind of like, users in and get them to actually like, see in the room where, and you're like, yes, that's it, because they're thinking that's a button and they're pressing that.
It's like jokes on you.
Well, yeah, but it's on us, right? So it's like, it's like, yes, of course, obviously, and I think that kind of combination of like user research and data is like,
I mean, and this would have been very, very difficult, like given 10 years ago, for example, of no way of tracking any of this. So you'd have an app out there, people would be interacting with it, but you have no idea what your users are doing.
Well, I don't think I've ever been worked on a product where we haven't like had a sense of the data. I think like sorry, what I meant was that like nowadays it's all digital. Back then it's like somehow you have stacks of reports and like all that kind of stuff. Nowadays they somehow manage it to make it a lot more seamless and easier for all of it. Another concept that is, I guess, really melds into the two of like design, tech, and all this lovely stuff is that there's a concept called A/B testing. Yes,
which is putting out multiple copies of something and seeing which one sticks the best, I guess, and then going along with it. So do you have some kind of process related to that?
Yeah, we've got loads of A/B tests in the game, and to the point where at one point we were A/B testing a whole different economy to like a totally different game.
Yeah.
It's fantastic because you can see really clearly in the data what's like which one's winning, and I think it's in my experience the bigger tests have been more interesting.
Yeah.
So like if you kind of like doing a button color or something like that, then that'll kind of maybe tell you something, or it might be a bit ambiguous. But if you kind of do really big chunky changes, then that's we use those all the time. And it's also interesting how much like huge companies use it. Like I got into an A/B test of Instagram, which just had a total different, like you didn't even scroll up and down anymore. You just sort of scrolled left to right.
Okay.
So I think it's something used across loads of products.
Yeah, and also like when we're talking about like just the business impact of something, like that usually will have a direct business impact just because the user flow, the retention, and then just the number of users to begin with, that's always influenced by these user experience, which obviously for the people who are looking at it, it's a design most of the time. So that's really cool. And I guess if you're on the fence of something, if you have an A/B testing running and it's kind of like a 50-50, do you always have a decision where it's like, oh, well, I mean, if it's 50-50, it's not worth putting in the extra work to do it? Or do you have like another protocol to decide?
I think it's a case by case basis. I don't think we've got a sort of set way of doing it. I think if it is 50-50, I guess like usually there's some reason why we've done an A/B test. Like it might be a kind of hunch that people aren't getting to a certain point in the game or whatever.
Yeah.
And so if we think that has solved that particular problem and the data is about the same, then in terms of retention or monetization or whatever, then we'll probably follow through with that. But I don't think there's like a set. It's a case.
Okay, cool. A lot of times for us, it's like if there's less work to do, then we're just gonna leave it. Like,
okay.
No, I'm kidding. Obviously,
but I guess also it's like if it's 50-50, then it's like, oh damn it, maybe it's not. Maybe we've hit the wrong test.
Yeah,
like it's not that inputful.
That's probably more disappointing than finding out that like you don't have to do extra work. That's probably like how I'd see it. And actually, you did mention this, how some of the softwares allow you to do animations.
Yes.
And because one of the biggest, I guess, like challenge is that you have a design, but you don't know after pressing a button if the button disappears, if the button like changes color, kind of thing. So how do you tackle that? How do you tackle the fact that there are animations, they're all across the mobile and web world?
Yeah, because it's a game, the Run and Empire's game, there's lots of animations in it. So we really want it to feel fun, and I think that's one of the ways you do it is by bringing those bits of like animation in. I use XD to it's got a brilliant auto animate feature which allows you to tween between screens, and you can sort of set how quick that happens, and if it happens with a little bounce or whatever, and that can be it's fantastic actually. It's really open. It lets you do, it gives you lots of options basically. That works for us. But then again, coming back to this point about kind of developers having to double up on the work. Yeah. Like it is frustrating for our developers to then go into Unity and try and recreate it. So I think as much as possible, I try and just dive into Unity and make it do what I want and feel exactly how I want it.
That's probably from my point of view is that like do you end up giving them a file? Like do you usually tell them this does this, because obviously you have all these
so it's like a link basically. So it's like a link of a prototype, and that'll have anything up to 30 screens in it.
And just getting hit in the face with that's like, all right, I got loads of work to do that.
And a kind of handover as well, as sort of says like, these are some of the game design stuff that's happening underneath, and it's when it will come up and things like that.
That's really cool, because I know in the web dev world, it's such it's so ever evolving all the time. Even just the frameworks or the tools that we use to make an animation from a square turning into a bigger square, like that gets revamped so often. Every 5 years or something, there's going to be a new tool, the new kid in town that's like everybody uses it, and all the animation goes through that. So I do get the hard bit of translating the designs, and even having an animation in your design and getting somebody else to reimplement it. It's always a problem. If somebody solves it, they're going to be a billionaire at that point.
Yeah, I think they will. I think we're getting close. I think the Figma, I don't know. I think they're all kind of they're circling in on it.
Yeah, that's exciting. I guess we're just going to wrap it up, I guess. I think the most important bit is for the people that are, back at a couple of steps that you went through in GCSE uni kind of thing and really want to get into the design world, what's the best advice you got for them?
I think that the thing that always served me in good stead was like having a skill. So like if you're going somewhere like no design studio is gonna hire like a 20-year-old creative director. Like really they want you in to sort of do a job, and usually it's a specific, like making a website or whatever. And so I think just having a skill that you've really kind of honed in on, whether it's drawing or taking beautiful pictures or making beautiful graphics, like just like have something like that up your sleeve.
That's great. I listen to that as saying you should have a passion. That's basically what it is. You should have a passion, and you should have something that you really want to go out and go get at the end of the day. So, I mean, Tom, thank you so much for being on the show.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me. It's been great.